I want to move to a farm bill that rewards farm practices, not crops.
This is Barn Raising. I'm Sara June.
Austin Frerick is an expert on agriculture and antitrust policy. He served on the Biden campaign's Committee for Agriculture or Antitrust Policy, and he is the author of Barron's, Money, Power, and the Corruption of America's Food Industry. Hi, Austin. Thanks for joining us today here at Barn Raiser.
My pleasure. Good to chat with you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. Austin, I was going to start off with just some current issues happening in agriculture and just get your response on a couple of things that we're currently rolling with.
Oh, sure. I mean, where do you want to start? There's so much going on.
I know. I know. I guess one of my first questions was the last time I talked to you was back in August or September when the Arkansas farmers were raising alarm bells. Where do you want to start?
I mean, that's actually the first thing I want to start with, because I think that says everything about this moment, where the New York Times had a story just the other day saying farmers and adults are going to let their crops rot because the prices are so bad. At the same time, we're having a food affordability crisis. You know what I mean?
I know.
Food's rotting. To me, that captures how broken these systems are, that farmers are letting crops rot and they're barely getting by as Americans are paying more and more for food in the stores.
So on January 1st, it looks like the meat industry started doing requirements where product of USA and made in the USA, that's going to start appearing there and being authentically like the livestock was born in the United States, processed, finished in the United States. What do you say? Is that a win?
I mean, no, because here's why. I'm so sick of giving gold stars for doing basic things. And when Americans buy meat that says made in America, it should mean made in America. This debate's been going on for more than a decade. To me, this is a good example of the incompetency of USDA. You don't get a reward for doing your job. It's embarrassing more than anything that took them this long to make that label to mean something. I mean, the scariest thing right now for me in the beef markets is normally at this moments like this where prices are high and herd population's low, ranchers expand the herd. They have more babies. They're not doing that. We're not seeing herd expansion. And what this is telling me is ranchers, I mean, these markets have been so tight for so long. They don't trust USDA to police these markets, and they don't think they'll get a good price in the future. So they're essentially letting the American herd shrink. So more and more of our beef will then be imported. So I mean, I just think the whole made in the USA thing is just a good example of USDA's incompetency, and it's a good example of just what's going on in the beef markets, of just how hard it is to farm in America anymore.
I just want to talk about pricing for a second. Like in 2019, pricing for a pound of hamburger was like about $3.50. Today, it's more like $6.50. Consumers can't afford beef basically anymore. So who's making the money in there in the last 7 years?
The Packers. I mean, RCAF is a great cattlemen's organization, and they have this great chart they put out. I love to show it in my presentations, where what Americans spend for beef and what the rancher gets for the longest time was pretty correlated. What happened in 2015 is when that divergence really started to occur. And then you just see that gap grow. And that to me is a story of monopoly. You're seeing Americans spend record prices for beef, but that's not going to the farmer. It's all going to one secret. I mean, the largest beef packer in America is a Brazilian, like a cartoonishly corrupt Brazilian family. So it's all going to them. They're also Trump's largest inauguration donor. So it's all going to them. And then, so I just think of what this means for real communities. This means you're just seeing them, their wealth being hollowed out. I mean, they're producing the most they've ever produced, but that wealth is not staying there. And so Americans are paying more, and this one secret family is just capturing all that. And on top of it, you're seeing a lot of corners being cut. Like, beef imported from Brazil, it's just not as good. I mean, that is I think an undercurrent right now in the American food system. Kind of something I realized the last few years is this whole system is making bad tasting food.
I know. I have to say, I try to get chicken through a local farmer right here. And when you start eating locally chicken that's raised on a normal farm, the difference is amazing compared to what you buy, a Tyson chicken in the store. It's amazing, and consumers have no idea.
They have no idea, but it's also the farmer doing it right, doing it locally, is not playing on a level playing field. They're not getting subsidies. These industrial big ag companies are. And so it's like, it takes, you know what I mean? Like, it's just not fair. And so the family farmer, you can only run uphill for so long.
That's right.
And that's like I think butter to me is my favorite example. Is butter in America is awful. It's white, it's hard, it doesn't spread well. And here's what's going on is, I mean, a lot of butter in America now comes from Bakersfield, California. It's cows on a feedlot next to an oil rig fed corn. Corn makes it more fibrous. They're not eating grass, so it's not yellow. Whereas on the other side, Kerrygold, second largest branded butter now in America, Irish butter. People love it. Here's the thing. That's the way butter used to be in America.
Yeah.
But now it's a premium. Now it's only for the yuppie class, which is like, it just shows you how many corners are being cut. And it's not, I just want to make that point on price is we've chosen to subsidize this really bad system. And most of the subsidies are just being captured by a few rich oligarchs or robber barons.
I wanted to back up a little bit. You were talking about our communities and investing in these systems here that are hurting our communities. Tyson Foods announced this month that they're cutting 5,000 employees in their industry. I think they're taking they cut a line in Amarillo, Texas, so that's 1,700 employees. And then in Lexington, Nebraska, they're cutting, I think, the whole plant. There's 3,200 employees being impacted by that closure. And Lexington, Nebraska has a population of around 10,000. So we're really kind of looking at a third of the whole community there is facing unemployment. For Tyson, this is just business as usual for them. But they gave the reason that this is because there isn't the cattle market. There's not enough beef being produced in the United States. Is this because Tyson is moving their beef production overseas? Like, are they going international? Like, is that in part why Tyson is closing domestic processing plants?
I think it's a few things. I do think as I mentioned earlier, our beef supply chain is moving offshore. I mean, but also like Tyson's in a weird pickle where like the other big beef packers are state-backed monopolies. I mean, JBS, Martis, Tyson doesn't have these Brazilian operations like they do. So you're seeing that play out, but then you're also, you can't deny the climate crisis here. Is a lot of former beef packing regions, you just can't do it because of the aquifers, and it's getting too hot. I mean, we saw a few years ago in western Kansas where over 1,000, or it might have been 2,000 cattle died because of a heat wave. And then at the same time too, they're being hit with the ethanol, where like at the ethanol mandate has essentially pushed a lot of cattle off the land. So it's really grown the corn belt. So ranchers are in this weird pickle where they have less land because of the climate crisis, but then corn's taken over a lot more land too. So they're like, you know what I mean? They can't compete for land rent against ethanol. And so they're having less options. And on top of it, with the squeeze they're feeling from the packers, their margins are getting tight. And a lot of them are just saying it's not worth it.
When you look at the situation in Lexington, Nebraska, this kind of is basically a disaster for a small town and rural area in general. And this is kind of like a repeat situation. Can you talk a bit about how this situation is impacting when these corporations come in, they sell an area on job creation, they invest in the tax base, and then they up and close, they leave. It's like a death sentence. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I'm really shaped by Newton, Iowa here. So Newton, Iowa used to be home to Maytag appliances.
That's right.
And I was, I believe it closed in 2006. I went to college nearby down the road, and it's a slow death because you don't realize it overnight. You know, I mean, people still have their homes. What tends to happen is you can't sell your home when these things close. And your home's your everything in America. That's your wealth. So what tends to happen is, first of all, some people just take a loss, take a big cut, try to restart somewhere else. The other thing too is people start doing long commutes. So in the case of Newton, people start driving like an hour to Des Moines for new jobs, making a fraction of what they used to. So think about what that does for the local community of Newton, Iowa. People have less time to be active in their communities. On top of it, they have less money. So you kind of see the slow decay of the community. I mean, Newton's tried really hard since to, recreate itself, do some wind turbine stuff, but it's not the same as it used to be. Because on top of it, what you lose out, what's unique to Newton is they lost a white collar. A lot of the workers in Maytag would live in the town, like the ad people and all that, and that's gone.
Yep.
The scary thing in the case of this Tyson plant is it's pretty remote. So, I mean, there's not a lot of job options. And so it's I think it's going to even really hurt the community even more because people are just going to, you can't drive 2 hours for a job. I mean, some people do, but a lot of people probably just take a big financial hit and try to restart somewhere else. And so you'll just see this town kind of really decay.
Right.
I mean, I think that's an underappreciated thing of consolidation and all this. It's all the towns that got hollowed out because of it.
Well, and there's school consolidations that happen. Clinics close, hospitals close. States don't get enough, or the local community doesn't get enough money for maintaining a school. So
it's a slow, but it's death by 1,000 cuts. It's very, very slow, but it dies slowly. Where like you'll just notice every few weeks a restaurant will close or a different, a grocery store close. The community won't die overnight, but it will slowly 5-10 years from now. No new capital will flow in, and everything will just kind of slowly run down.
Yeah. So, Austin, you're an expert in antitrust laws, and that's just such a page-turning area expertise, which it really is. But most consumers don't walk around in their grocery stores with these working knowledge of how like a Packers Stockyards Act impacts their purchasing power in the grocery store, or the Robinson-Patman Act. What is the future of antitrust tools with these two acts?
Well, first of all, fun little fact. First antitrust laws in the world come out of Iowa. I always love telling that. Well, it was Iowa farmers mad against the railroads and grain elevators. So they organized, the Iowa legislative body passed the first antitrust laws in the world. Then a few states copied it, and then eventually DC did it. I love telling this story because it really has ingrained in me the notion that DC is always the last to know. Change in America always starts locally. I'm kind of doing some research on this right now, but like the New Deal didn't just happen. A lot of the New Deal actually came from Wisconsin. They call it the Little New Deal. So these ideas are always incubated, small towns and states in America, and then we scale them. So I say that for Iowa is, I'm really shaped by that. And I think that's part of the Iowa culture of just fairness. Like the joke in Iowa is usually the richest person in Iowa is like an old farmer in the back with overalls on. And like, it's just, you don't flaunt your money, which is very unlike certain East Coast communities. It's very much like, it's, there's a humbleness I've always respected. And I think that that's why a lot of Iowans gravitate towards anti-monopoly stuff. Like a lot of the modern antitrust, anti-monopoly people today in America, a lot of them have an Iowa connection, which I find really cool.
Yeah.
But to your question on the future of antitrust, honestly, the reason why I love it the most is I think it's one of the most bipartisan things right now in America is everyone's feeling like they're being shortchanged for different reasons, but it's unifying. My whole thing is don't blame the immigrant, blame Tysons. People have a right to feel their anger, they do, but redirect it to productive means. I also kind of view this whole thing as cyclical. I mean, it's such a simple thing that we kind of forgot that the goal of any corporate executive is monopoly. That's where profits are. Corporate people don't want competitive markets. Government wants competitive markets because that's good for innovation, it's good for workers, it's good for farmers. So you have a natural tension between the two. And I just think we're at a moment in American history, like a laissez-faire moment where, business captured government, things got too far. We need to usher in a reform era. So what excites me is A, this is bipartisan, and two, is what should we do? I mean, what should a well-regulated meat market look like? Because it's just at some point, you can only be angry for so long. I really want to focus on articulating that hope, what things could be, because so the solutions is just, no one's really saying that right now. And that's like the fun part I've had the last few years, just seeing people doing cool things locally. You're like, how do we take what you're doing and scale?
That's right. And I am going to give you that opportunity shortly to talk about the innovation happening in agriculture. I do want to ask really quickly too, though, these laws like the Packers and Stockyards Act, how do these policies apply when our food production moves international? That is the key question here, is these trade agreements.
I just think of any produce farmer in America, you can't, when these trade agreements, what they've done to produce is essentially moved our produce system in America offshore. I think that's labor intensive because like, when you look at California used to be a lot of produce. And now it's mostly nuts because that's mechanical. The second these things move offshore, labor and environmental standards collapse. I mean, in my book, I talk about Driscoll's. Driscoll's is my berry baron. They sell 1 in 3 berries globally, and they were part of this. A lot of berry production has moved to Baja, California. And these are basically essentially modern-day plantations. And it's very, very hard to inspect them. I mean, even as a journalist, you're putting yourself at risk if you want to go investigate them. And on top of it, we're having the food inspection service when food's imported to this country essentially collapse. It's been really gutted. So it's just a wild, wild west. And I say all this because anyone doing it right here, following the certain environmental rules, labor rules, you cannot compete on price against a berry picked by a child. And that is like what's really scary. So it's really, really undermines people doing it right here. Going back to taste, you know, when your produce is coming from Chile, it's not going to taste good. That produce is engineered for durability, not for taste. I mean, that to me is like, and that is something I didn't appreciate how many Americans thought that, especially older Americans. It's just like, you go to the grocery store now, most produce is so expensive and it's not good.
Austin, I wanted to move into some of the politics of ag, big ag. I've watched your work for a few years now, some of your publishing, and I see you navigating some polarized political scenes concerning agriculture and farming. So, like, on the one side, you're getting good recommendations from, like, the conservative magazine, The American Conservative. And then on the other side, you're also participating with events like the Real Organic Project. Do you see agriculture as politically polarized as how it looks out here, how it seems out here?
No. And that's why, well, first of all, thank you for noticing that. I kind of love that. Some people get scared by that, but like, I love telling people the same month this past summer, I keynoted one of the largest cattle conferences, and I also keynoted one of the largest vegan food festivals.
That's cool.
I'm a big believer that things get done when you have a Big Ten approach and weird bedfellows get together. Because it's also like, who isn't happy after a good meal? It's like just kind of redirecting the conversation there. That to me is where I want to play and where I want to be productive. But I think it's part of this bigger thing of, there's just neither party really has a vision here. If you read my book, an undercurrent is my dislike of Tom Vilsack. And partly it's just and I think that's my New Deal Catholicism showing itself. But it's just, there's nothing worse for a democracy than when someone pretends to be your friend, a politician, and they undermine you. And a lot of people were galvanized in Iowa fighting these industrial animal facilities, fighting these CAFOs, or big ag, wanting to break them up. A lot of farmers went on a limb, testified. And not only did he not do anything, he made all the situations worse.
Yeah.
So people don't believe in government anymore. They don't believe in public officials. I mean, that's my big thing right now is like, you have to earn, like, I'm sick and tired when politicians said, you have to force me to do it. Or, you know, it's like, no. Politicians need to earn back their trust in agriculture. Is like, that's what's fun though, is like, we know what to do here. Like, we've done this, we've addressed the concentration crisis in the meatpacking before. Like, we're not talking AI, we're talking hogs. So the question is just political courage. So that's what like, is you just know that some politician's going to tap into this because it's a pinata saying, hit me. Like, to me, it reminds me of like a storm in Midwest in the summer where you can just kind of taste it or smell it. You just know it's coming.
Yeah.
And someone's going to do it at some point. And the question is, I really want to focus on now is, what's the plan? How do we do it? And then, I don't know. I enjoy this, Sarah. It's fun.
Yeah, so like, focus on the plan. How do you get two sides to focus on a plan or pluralist plans that accommodates multiple growers and producers? How do you do that? Because in my experience, you've got the farmers that's got 3,000 acres in corn and beans. They don't take seriously the small farmers or organic farming, and so you've got these kind of competing. They're not in competition, but they're kind of in different wheelhouses of production.
Well, let me start by saying I love doing events. Like the past year, I've never traveled this much in my life. I view it almost as stand-up comedy, because what you're doing is you're trying rhetoric and you're also reading the room. Trust me, I put my foot in my mouth plenty of times, but you need to do that because, first of all, most people are... Online is not reality. You know what I mean? Online rewards crazy. And once you're in the room, you realize people are somewhere in the middle. And if you say something wrong, most people are nice enough to come up to you afterwards and say, hey, you should really frame it this way, talk about this, or you didn't know this. I've learned a lot doing that. And also figuring out the rhetoric. How do you use language to kind of unify a bunch of different people together? I'm a big believer too. In Italian, there's this phrase called politics of the artichoke, where like you kind of eat an artichoke one leaf at a time. And so, to apply that here, what I mean by that is you need to unify everyone and show people that change is possible. And I think you start with meatpacking. You need to trust bust the meat industry, because that unifies all the different types of farmers, all the workers. The vegans agree with it. You know what I mean? The cattle ranchers agree with it. Start there. Start the lowest hanging fruit and then build from there. Like you can't just start, you know what I mean? You got to target your fire. And that's like my philosophy here is, and I think that's been like a lost art, is people write books now. They write things based on what they do on Twitter. And that's not productive. And also, I'm a big believer. You have to see America to understand it. Like that is, I mean, Sarah, we're both from Iowa. I think doing this made me realize how Iowa I am in my framework, but like how unique the Iowa production model is. Like California is its own beast because of the way land was appropriated. And there's all these cool little microclimates going on in agriculture that, like, unless you know, you don't really know.
Yeah.
Upstate New York has tons of apple production south of the Great Lakes because of a unique climate they have. Michigan actually has a very diverse agricultural production system that's really cool. So I enjoy this, and it's discovering that.
Yeah. I was going to ask you also, because the people that I know who are big conventional farmers, and by conventional, I mean, they're doing corn and beans, they've got chemical inputs, that kind of thing. When I talk to folks like that, they actually really do want to go to more sustainable models, more organic, but the risk is, there's a lot of risk and expense with these transitions. And so what kind of programs are there for conventional farmers that do want to make the change?
Yeah, so that's something I really learned too the last few years is, especially in the Midwest, if you don't do corn and soy, you're going broke. That is what the crop insurance, that's what all these systems do. Our Farm Bill right now picks favorites. You grow corn, you get a ton of subsidies. You grow carrots, you get nothing. I mean, there was a story in my hometown paper the other day where, so I'm from Cedar Rapids, Quaker Oats has a big factory there. Most of the oats for Quaker Oats is coming from Canada. And Iowa used to have a ton of oat production. Why are we not doing oats right now in Iowa, especially with the soybean glut and all this other stuff? It's because our Farm Bill doesn't give that much subsidy to oats. So we need to change the Farm Bill. I mean, my dream is to take the Farm Bill, instead of subsidizing certain crops, I want to subsidize certain farm practices. Hey, if you do cover crops, buffer strips, pasture, whatever, let farmers decide what's best for their land. We got to stop picking favorites.
I can't wait till you have the control to do that. I can't wait. That's wonderful.
I mean, but like this is my personal tangent. I don't like supply management. I don't like the government picking optimal production, because then you have to the history of supply management was we dumped it on developing countries surplus, or we had these massive caves full of cheese. That's not smart. Also, what people want just changes. I mean, who would have thought there'd been this massive protein boom right now? I mean, take cottage cheese. I love using this example. They're building tons of cottage cheese plants down in America because young men are obsessed with cottage cheese right now. Who would have thought? I mean, I love cottage cheese, but growing up, cottage cheese was like an old lady food.
I know. But you know what's awesome is, let's pitch the cottage cheese industry in Iowa. Anderson Erickson cottage cheese is amazing. And they have mixes. They have veggie mixes in with the cottage cheese. It's really good.
So Sarah, just indulge me for a second. Anytime I travel in America, I love going to a grocery store, and I walk down every aisle. I look at all their things. The most unique thing about an Iowa grocery store is only in Iowa do you have so many sour cream dip options. To the non-Iowans out there, A&E has 10 different kinds of sour cream dip, and every Iowa fridge always has one of those. It is crack. It is so good. But they're building a new cottage cheese plant. And I say all this because I just want to move to a farm bill that does this, that incentivizes stewardship payments, because what makes sense in Montana is going to make different in Florida. And we have to allow that to happen. To your conventional farmers too, is what I realized is, I mean, they're in a really hard spot right now. I mean, they see the writing on the wall, but they have to keep doing this model. And the thing about the farm bill, what I realize is it doesn't even care about them.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite little example of its failure is for every dollar Americans spent to store, farmers in America get the least amount ever recorded in American history.
Yeah.
You just realize the farm bill is designed for Cargill, for Pepsi, not for them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's another good example of just how broken USDA and the farm bill has gotten. Like, a lot of conservation money now goes to these hog manure lagoons. They call it EQIP. And you're just like, we're financing industrial hog manure lagoons, which, by the way, our pork consumption in America is not going up. A lot of this additional pork is for China. So we're destroying real America to feed China. And we're using our conservation dollars for that instead of doing it to wildflower seeds or buffer strips. Yeah. I mean, again, what I really came to internalize is the system we have now is radical. So much of these changes we're talking about are traditional. Yeah. And that's just something is Big Ag has done a really good job the last few decades of saying anyone challenging the system is, hippy dippy, crazy, anti-food, whatever. And you're like, you can't say you want to feed the world and believe in ethanol in the same sentence.
That's right.
You're not. You're taking the best farmland in the world and you're wasting it. That is what's driving me. Like, to me, the single best thing you can do to make food more affordable in America right now is in the ethanol mandate. It's been more than 20 some years. Ethanol should compete on its own. It should not have a government mandate.
The USDA is coming through with something called the Farm Bridge Assistance Program. So they're bringing in $12 billion to provide a one-time economic relief for crop farmers. Can you talk about that? Is that going to work?
No. I mean, there's no plan here. All they're doing, and this is what they've done constantly, is just throw money at the problem. These are structural issues. That's why the farm bill is increasingly becoming incredibly expensive. And these are bigger. I mean, it's only going to get more expensive until we make these structural adjustments. I mean, increasing the ethanol blend is not fixing these underlying issues. And so that's my big critique here is, I was thinking about this preparing for this interview last night, and I'm pretty confident saying Secretary Rollins is probably the worst USDA secretary we've had in my lifetime. I mean, to be fair, there's no good ones in neither political party, but like, she's the worst mix of just like incompetency, and there's no vision, there's no planning, it's just like, it's really scary because we're at such a pivotal moment, in all these different ways. It's like the worst possible person at the worst possible time.
Yeah, so it's reactionary, really, and the long-term benefits aren't there.
It's reactionary, but it's like she has no experience.
Yeah.
Her previous job she was just a front for some oligarch organization. She doesn't know this stuff. Like, this stuff is really complicated. Like, crop insurance is really complicated. I mean, even the dairy program. My favorite joke in the dairy world is only 5 people understand the dairy program and 4 of them are dead. And like, to come into these markets that are complex, but then also have really big issues, and to like not put in the work, not to get up to speed, not have good people around her. It's just, we're just watching a slow moving disaster. And I actually think more than anything, she will be partly why, if Republicans lose the House, the Senate, the president in the years ahead, it's partly because of her. Because food prices matter. And she's doing nothing to get at these core issues of affordability.
Can you talk about, first, for people that are growing tomatoes and carrots and hoop houses and things like that, can you tell me, does the Farm Bill have anything for subsidies or safety nets for those small producers? No.
Those farmers doing produce usually are the only ones really in the free market. I always tell people the farmer you see at the farmer's market is the only one really in the free market at this point. That said, that's why, I mean, I kind of had, for the longest time, people who want to make change are like, oh, let's have a pot of money to help schools buy local, whatever. Like, very much like a carrot approach. I call it I'm in my stick era now. I think we should mandate that colleges buy a certain percent local. Yeah. That, like, to me, a lot of these farmers will tell you privately who do this type of production model, they don't like doing the farmer's market. It's hard. You get rained out. When schools buy carrots, they know they're going to sell X amount each week. I mean, I'm working with some Republicans in Texas on this. I mean, this to me is like, speaking of bipartisan, is they love it. Because first of all, the state doesn't have to pay for it. They're shifting the burden onto these colleges who don't pay taxes. So I really do believe they should help lead the charge. And I'm really shaped because I went to a small school in Iowa, but had a really big endowment because Warren Buffett was a trustee for a long time. And one of the most famous produce farms in Iowa is literally across the street from the college. And guess what? Our college dining hall wasn't feeding us our produce. We were getting like industrial produce from like Mexico. And that produce farm went broke. And that really scared a lot of other young farmers in Iowa. Like, if they can't make it, how can I? And that is unacceptable. I'm just like over it. Like, we need to help shift these supply chains, and these colleges should help do it. And like, and this is something you can do locally. You can work with your school or college, but really not asking, mandating that they do this behavior. And you can also have fun with this. Year 2, you do this. Year 4, you do that. Year 6, like, there's no reason why in Texas, all beef steers in Texas, it should be coming from Texas ranchers, not from the Brazil rainforest.
Exactly. I know that some of the smaller colleges are also doing things like where they're getting the students involved with like helping the farmer bring in the produce, harvest it, wash it, prepare it so that the kitchens can serve it to the college students. Is that what you're talking about? Is that the...
Yes, but I want more. I want requirements, because what tends to happen is the colleges will do it for a few years. When there's an active student, when they graduate, they give up. I mean, I've heard that story so many times. And on top of it, I noticed this personally. I got married at that college in Iowa, a small town. Long story short, my mom's Irish Catholic. She's one of 12. So we did it at a college campus. And the problem we had was, my big thing was I wanted all Iowa food pasture-based. The Cisco, the largest food distributor, a lot of them, they design a lot of the college kitchens and school kitchens. And what they do is they design them to be frozen food. So it's really hard for these schools and colleges to do scratch cooking. So first of all, that's a hurdle they have to face. But I want to move to that requirement because I want this to outlast the student. You want them to know that, like, okay, we just have to do this. We have to buy a certain percent. Because they'll make up an excuse, well, X, Y. I'm also kind of shaped by, and this is, again, my personal experience. In college, we had a buffet, and the first thing you saw when you came in was the fried food station. And you're like, I'm sorry, I love chicken fingers, but like, you shouldn't. I think we should move back to like what you had growing up in high school, where you just kind of had 1 or 2 entrees you picked. Let the people who work in food, they're professionals. They know it's nutritious. Don't just put fried food in front of a bunch of stressed kids. You're only going to make them more stressful, and it's not good for them. And like, you're wasting bad. It's like a ton of bad food being wasted.
Yeah.
I'd rather just kind of move back to this, like what we grew up with in school, move back to that model and waste less food and make better quality food.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of this rural innovation. What are you looking at when you're out in the field? What models are you looking at that you imagine you could see scaling someday?
Oh man. So like a few different things. So I'm kind of working on another book on this. So I don't want to give too much away. It's a combination of looking at other countries that are doing cool things and how can we kind of copy and paste that here, but then also like, what are cool little programs? So like one little program is, I profiled this Ellen. She is a farmer and a mother in Western Iowa who also opened a restaurant where she serves her own meat. And the big problem she had was the big distributors don't want to deal with local mom and pop farmers. So she created her own nonprofit food distribution company. What a cool thing. Yeah. She helped farmers in the area get, put together infrastructure so then they can help feed the kids. Sadly, part of the Doge cuts, they really hammered that program, that nonprofit. But let's grow that. I mean, what a cool thing. Let's grow that. Also, we could rethink extension. That could be extension's role, is to kind of play that public procure for institutional buyers like schools and colleges. My current obsession right now is that Irish butter, as that's why I mentioned it earlier, is Ireland doesn't do industrial cows. They do cows on grass. You can have a family with a few kids and 100 cows and make a decent living in Ireland. You cannot do that in America. You have to do this industrial model that's mostly undocumented labor. And we've had this massive change recently in American agriculture where people that farm it, like the disconnect between land ownership and farming. where the people that own it tend to live in the big cities and they hire low-paid people to do all the work. So look at that Irish system of like, how do you prevent that industrial thing that really undermines family farms?
Yeah.
So that's like a system I'm looking at. Another big thing I think that's been underappreciated too is just rampant food fraud. What is, like the Made in USA label? You can add any color. You could take really bad white butter and add yellow dye to it if you want. I think we should create a different agency just to kind of get, like the United Kingdom has a version of this, just kind of like really police these markets. And on top of it, not even just create standards, but also just enforce it. I mean, the lack of enforcement is really bad in the food industry. Milkweed is a dairy publication and great dairy publication in Wisconsin. And they recently ran a story where the editor of the paper at the local grocery store, he noticed this ice cream and he picked it up, and it was imported from China, and it didn't meet the definition of ice cream, and it had literally a warning label on the back for like, this could include toxic chemicals. And he reported it to the state, but like, why is it up to this person who knows a lot about dairy policy to realize people are buying a fraudulent food item from China?
That's really frustrating. I'm taking that in, Austin. That's going to take me a couple minutes to process.
No, and that one is that's scary. I think that is the rampant. I mean that's something going back to giving book talks and learning lessons. I personally don't put much weight to the organic label anymore because there's so much fraud. Like when I'm in, let's take Trader Joe's. If I see like from Turkey on the back, I don't really trust that label because I know Turkey as a country is known for rampant organic fraud. And I said this in a talk one day in Iowa last year, and I had our organic farmer kind of very nicely rip me a new one because she's like, you're right, but here's the thing. That premium that most consumers don't know what you know, and when you tell people not to trust the organic label anymore, that premium I get right now is how I live, how I barely get by. So part of the problem here is we need to make these labels mean something again.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. And it's going to take me a little bit to process it. But yeah, that's like, I think that as consumers, even when I go shopping, I'm not thinking through these things. I see a box of strawberries and I think
you shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to. That is the failure of this moment is instead of the government doing its job, we shifted onto you. And guess what? Most of us work at 9 to 5. We're busy. We don't have time to know labels mean something. I'm even at the point now, for something to be called organic, it has to be done in America because we can't trust the systems of other countries. Why should we spend our money to make sure the food coming out of Turkey is meaning what it says?
Yeah.
Also, that doesn't make sense. Like, Trader Joe's has tons of organic imported juice. Why are we shipping liquid across the world? That makes no sense. You can do, take apples. You can do apples in most states in America. Like 48 out of the 50 states. We shouldn't be importing our apple juice, but we are.
So whether we want to or not, it is on the consumer as we're out there shopping to figure things out. How can consumers get closer to the farmer and put our dollars into the farmer's pockets instead of into these monopolies?
There's 2 questions I always hear when I give talks. And that question is, what should I buy? I'm always hesitant to answer that because first of all, I know an insane amount. Like, this is what I love. I can tell you which brands are kind of BS and not in the store. But here's the thing, they change. So it's like what makes sense one day is not the same the next day. That said, what we really need to think about now is structural. We need to make structural changes. So if there's a certain vendor you like at the farmer's market, these people are first of all, they're doing like 20 different things at once. The best thing you can do is actually advocate for them to colleges and schools. Help pair them up. Help stabilize their business. Help grow them. Hey, college, hey, you should really buy from this person. You be their advocate because that will really, you can buy a bag of carrots from them each week, or guess what? They can sell a ton of carrots locally. And you going to bat for them really makes a difference here. That's what you can do, is we need to start thinking that way. On top of it, first of all, a lot of people already are, but also is brag about it, talk about it. Tell your local newspaper, reach out to journalists. Hey, there's this cool program over here. How do we scale it? I mean, that's kind of the fun thing I've had is doing all these different events. I always tell people you learn the most in the hallways. Like, the example I always think of is I was speaking in the Wisconsin Dells 2 years ago at the Wisconsin Farmers Union, which the non-Midwesterners, it's like the water park capital of America. It's like, I think there's like 12 indoor water parks. It's kind of cool. It's kind of crazy. There could be a book written on it. Anyways, a friend of mine, I was just catching up with her, and she was telling me about how there's a lot of cool indigenous food programs going on in northern Wisconsin, and a lot of it's being driven by the casinos. And she was just kind of telling me like, oh, historically, we used to dump surplus cheese on these tribes. And what they're doing now is they're creating these programs where they're buying from indigenous farmers and giving that food to needy indigenous people. But you don't do this overnight. And she was showing me how like first one year they did this many, and then the next year they did more. Like they're slowly growing it. And like what a cool proof of concept that unless you're in those worlds in Wisconsin, you don't know this exists. But that's what I love about that is first of all, it takes a while to kind of work out the kinks. And you're like, now, okay, how do we take this cool thing? How do we tell the world about it? And how do we scale it? So that way it's the norm. And like the other example is like Minnesota has some really cool native stuff going on too. There's a famous restaurant where they serve only North American indigenous food. And Chef Sean Sherman, who runs that, makes a really good point. He just doesn't want to make food for yuppies. His whole goal is to like, it's just another cuisine that his kid could order on DoorDash.
Yeah.
But a lot of this is just lost history. Is like, how do we bring that back? Part of it is just, we give some money to local colleges so they can kind of study this, talk about this. And, Chef Sherman's doing that. And it's also fun. I can't say this enough. It's going back to the Hope thing. Like they're getting ready to open like a indigenous barbecue restaurant. Like that sounds cool. Like imagine just having like, some bison or some like elk barbecue. It sounds fun. It sounds experimental. What a way to also learn about culture. And I could vomit like 20 other examples at you, but I say all this because that's not what social media rewards right now. Social media rewards crazy, extreme takes. Average Americans being good to each other, doing good things doesn't go viral right now. But guess what? That's where most people are. And people want to hear that.
Yeah, I love that because it's radical. The goodness and the positive things happening on the ground in rural and small town places, all that good stuff, that's actually radical now.
What you need to show people, because people are shutting down. That's what I've noticed in my last few months doing talks is people, and that's what the powers that be want, that's what the oligarchs want, is they want you to give up. And more than anything, moments like this demand that you don't. And so that's why I profile my last book, Ellen, of like, look what this woman did. It's incredible that she did. She raised 2 kids, ran a farm, and built a restaurant, and built a distribution company. There's a reason why she won Mother of the Year in Iowa. But she, to me, is what Iowa could be. I mean, one of the last slides I say, and I used to say kind of tongue-in-cheek, but like, Iowa should be the Tuscany of North America.
Yeah.
It's good food shouldn't just be a yuppie thing. Everyone should be entitled to it. We should lean into it. Like food makes a place a place. I mean, you're seeing a lot of this cool stuff. And I don't know, that's where I at some point too, I mean, that's Sarah, I have a whole document I call my purgatory thing where I just write down all the robber barons people tell me about that I missed. And at some point you can only critique so much. To me, my first book is you have to understand how we got to this moment in order to fix it. But now the question is, what do we do next?
And is that what your next book is going to be about?
Hopefully. I like that, one day at a time. But that's what I also kept a note document going, just writing down these cool programs and cool things. And like going to your question earlier about trade agreements, how do we make a trade agreement that's fair? Like, you can't really grow avocados in America. We do need import them, but there's no reason why we've outsourced our apple production. So how do you strike a balance? Like I just keep going back to, so much of life is Goldilocks, like figuring out that sweet spot. And we've just gone so far one direction.
Yeah.
But figuring out how do we get back? What is that road back? Because and I didn't even realize this. My book opens with a pissed off old lady in Iowa fighting against industrial hog facilities, which the fun little dirty secret is the people, like it's pissed off old ladies that get things done. And they're kind of the backbone of fighting for this new system. Because they know, Julie always told me is she know what Iowa used to be. And she's doing it for her granddaughter. And like she also always said, we didn't get here overnight. So it's going to take decades of work. But you have to know what you're trying to do. Because if you're not, you're just going to be like Brooke Rollins, where you're just throwing money at the problem and things will just get worse.
Yeah.
Because at some point, this system will break. Like it's either a COVID-type disease will come out of one of these industrial animal facilities, The markets are just getting so glutted. The climate crisis, you kind of name it. And then also, there's a whole layer of, I don't even fully understand how these diet drugs are going to really impact the food system, but they are. I mean, you're seeing really big shifts in the food system because of these diet drugs.
What do you mean by that? I didn't know this. What?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, first of all, a lot of people in my family are on them, but those Ozempic drugs. I mean, I think they're down to $150 a month now. Don't quote me on that, but they're really coming down on price. And a lot of people are going on them. And so what we've seen is, my understanding from people that have studied this is, in most households, the wife or the woman buys the food, and they're disproportionately on them. And even if the husband isn't on it, a lot of other people in the family lose weight because she's buying less food. And people are really shifting what they want to eat. So a lot of people on these drugs are eating more vegetable. They really crave more vegetables, more Greek yogurt, that kind of stuff. And they're really moving away from like your processed foods.
Fascinating.
Alcohol consumption. Yeah, people drink a lot less on these diet drugs too. So if you notice, Gen Z is drinking less, but a lot of people on Ozempic are drinking less. So the alcohol stocks are really changing. But I mean, we're seeing these massive shifts in just a few years. I mean, it's just imagine what's going to be 5-10 years from now.
Yeah.
If it's going to, I mean, at some point, being on these diet drugs will cost people $30 a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really going to change the food system.
When the New Deal policies were coming through for agriculture, it disproportionately actually hurt African American farmers. They had more losses, had to give up more land during the New Deal. And that was one of my questions was, how do we create policy where there's equality and access for Black farmers, Asian farmers, and small organic farmers, that kind of thing. And I mean, I don't know if you have an opinion on that, but I think that's one of, we talk about the New Deal, we love the New Deal policies, but then there's also these inadvertent things happening that harmed people.
I mean, the land report just came out ranking who owns the most land in America. And the Walmart family now owns more land in America than all the farmland of Black farmers.
Combined.
And that, to me, says so much about this moment. The way we get away from this is, here's the thing. There's never one thing that fixes everything. You have to do a constellation of things. Kind of like Teddy Roosevelt didn't just break up the meat thing. It was a constellation of things that broke up the meat industry and fixed it. So it's simple as, if tying Farm Bill, you have to work the land. I think that's such a huge thing. Like you can't get Farm Bill money if you're a corporate investor.
Yeah.
Yeah. On top of it, the second thing is maybe taxing that farmland. If you're passive, you have a higher farmland tax rate. I mean, you're doing all these things where you're not. I'm always hesitant for the government to come in, take over land, or do whatever. But you want to make it in such a way where it doesn't make sense for the Walmart family to have this much farmland. You want to give the young farmer a chance.
Yeah.
And even something as like Farm Credit is actually an incredibly powerful organization that's really not that well understood. They could why are they giving out loans to private equity? Imagine if you had good people on that board and you really hone it in, like, we're going to really help young farmers instead of giving loans to private equity to roll up these spaces. That's what, there's so much here. The question is personnel, is having the right people in positions of power. Is like USDA has a lot of authority to rein in the meat packers. Even on something simple as, where I got angry with Tom Vilsack was, why are you giving USA contracts to a JBS, a corporation that pled guilty to bribery, that alleged to use child labor and alleged to use to bribe meat inspectors? Don't give them subsidies. You know what I mean? Like, at some point there has to be consequences for bad actors, because if they're not, they're going to keep pushing the envelope. And so much of this space, I just feel it's a bunch of young kids that haven't been punished. So they keep pushing the envelope, and until there actually have consequences, it's only going to get worse. But this goes back to personnel. You have people like Brooke Rollins, whose her whole career is just being a hack for oligarchs. That's what you're going to get. You need to get actual reformers in positions of power, and then things will change. And I think we saw that with Lena Khan. Lena Khan changed the Federal Trade Commission, and people of both parties loved her because she actually was a public servant being a public servant.
Austin, is there anything that I didn't cover in some of my questions here that you really want to hit home for the audience here at Barn Raiser?
Yeah, I just tell your audience is journalists are your best friends. If you see something, say something. I mean, for me personally, my best information came from people sending emails, telling me, hey, you should look over here. Oh, I heard this. I mean, there's people in my book that I originally wrote about who's like, yeah, take me out. I just do this for fun. I don't want people to know who I am. I don't want them to know what I do. And because getting mad online, or even if you read a story, you don't like how it's framed, it doesn't do anything to get mad at journalists online. Send a nice email like, hey, you should really talk to this person. Or, hey, my friend over here is doing something really cool. You know, and to any listener who knows of a cool program, please email me. I would love to hear it. And my last point there, and this is something I really thought about recently, is being a member of a democratic society requires you to at least pay for one news subscription. That's like the hill I'm going to die on. Is like, it really bothers me that a lot of people don't pay for news anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, what I grew up is like, I used to be a paper boy, and like half the households in my neighborhood got news. And now we live in a day and age where people are not. And if you're not paying for news, you're eating slop.
Yeah. You know, you're talking about my wheelhouse here, because being in a rural part of Southwest Virginia, our newspapers are closing up. I think we are down to one reporter at the newspaper in my town. And so journalism is kind of the Wild West right now, especially in rural small town areas where we've lost that civic space.
And we need to view journalism like a charity donation. I don't live in Cedar Rapids anymore, but I still get it. I still pay for the Cedar Rapids Gazette subscription.
Yeah.
I just like to know what's going on. It's $15 a month. And on top of it too, I encourage, for like me, one of the things I didn't expect is how much I love reading these niche news publications, these like trade publications. Like I love reading my milkweed. That's why I love reading those cottage cheese stories, or like, I encourage people to seek that out, pay for them if you can. Because it's just like, you go on Facebook and it's not news, it's anger, it's AI slop. There's something about local news where it's really, I can't say this, it's really good for you just to see people being good to each other.
Yes. Yeah.
And knowing what's going on in your community so you don't feel lonely. Because that's what these platforms do, is they want to get you angry and they want to get you lonely so you don't leave them.
Yeah.
Whereas part of a newspaper is, their job is create community. And by supporting them, you're encouraging that behavior.
That's right. Austin, thanks again so much for all your time. This has been wonderful.
My pleasure.